Hey, welcome back to The Explainer. So, today we're diving into something that connects ancient scripture with modern spirituality in a way that, well, you might not expect at all.
So, what if I told you that one of the biggest secrets to unlocking a higher state of consciousness isn't in some far-off monastery, but it's been hiding in plain sight this whole time, right inside the pages of the Bible? It's a really bold idea, and it's sparked a fiery debate between two very different ways of finding truth.
Now, according to one really fascinating school of thought, the key to this whole thing isn't buried in ancient history. Nope, it's actually inside our own heads. We're talking about a tiny, tiny gland right at the very center of the brain. Okay, let's get into this. So, what exactly is this supposed gateway in the brain? Well, we're talking about something called the pineal gland. And to really get what this debate is all about, you've got to see it from two completely different angles. Okay, so from a purely scientific point of view, the pineal gland is, pretty straightforward. It's this small, pinecone-shaped gland that pumps out melatonin. That's the hormone that manages our sleep cycles. Simple enough, right? But if you look at it through another lens, a spiritual one, the pineal gland becomes something way, way more profound. It's seen as this spiritual center, the legendary third eye, which is believed to be a direct line, a gateway to intuition, deeper awareness, and even spiritual awakening.
And look, this is not some new age idea that just popped up. Way, way back in the 17th century, the famous philosopher René Descartes called it the principal seat of the soul. He actually believed it was the exact point where our physical body and our non-physical mind connected. Pretty wild. Okay, but here's the million-dollar question. How does this mystical idea of a third eye actually connect to the Bible? Let's decode some of these biblical symbols and see exactly how proponents build their case.
All right, first up, let's go to Genesis 32:30. So Jacob has just wrestled with this mysterious figure all night long, and afterward he names the place where it all went down. He says, "So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, 'For I have seen God face to face.'"
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting. You've got this split in how you interpret that word. The historical view? It's pretty simple. Peniel is a Hebrew name, and it means face of God. It's just commemorating the event. But the spiritual view, they hear the sound of the word, Peniel, pineal. Is that just a coincidence? Or is it a symbolic clue pointing to an inner vision, seeing God not with your eyes, but with your pineal gland?
Let's grab another example. In the Gospel of John, the resurrected Jesus finds his disciples. They've been fishing all night, caught nothing, and he tells them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So what does the right side really mean here? Well, the historical interpretation sees it as a lesson in faith, right? Stop relying on your own failed efforts and trust in divine guidance. But the spiritual view? It hears a totally different command. It's not about the boat, it's about the brain. Engage the intuitive, creative right hemisphere of your brain, not just the logical left. And what happens when the disciples follow this instruction? They catch this weirdly specific number of fish, 153. Why 153? Why not 150 or a lot? So, in the spiritual interpretation, this number is anything but random. It's actually a mystical code. You add the digits together, 1 plus 5 plus 3, and you get 9. Now, in a lot of ancient numerological systems, the number 9 is a big deal. It represents spiritual completion, higher consciousness, and this just brilliantly highlights the contrast. Because the early church fathers, they had their own really complex theories. You have St. Jerome, who believed 153 was the number of known fish species at the time, so it represented catching all the nations of the world. Then there's St. Augustine, who saw it as a triangular number, symbolizing the combination of law and grace. I mean, these are completely different ways of looking at the exact same number. So all of this, the names, the fish, the numbers, it all brings us to the real heart of the debate. Because this isn't just about interpreting a few verses. It's about two fundamentally different worldviews clashing. It's history versus consciousness.
Yeah, take a look at this. It really lays out the core differences perfectly. The historical view says truth comes from external events, things that actually happened. The mystical view says no, truth comes from internal experience. For one side, reality is material, it's changing. For the other, it's conscious and it's eternal. And that changes the whole purpose of a sacred text. Is it a history book, or is it a timeless guide to your own spirit?
Okay, so let's put some clear labels on these ideas. Let's think of them as two different lenses you can use to look at truth.
On one side, you've got the historical lens. The goal here is pretty academic. Find the original author's intent. What did this mean to the people who first wrote it down and read it thousands of years ago? But on the other side, you have the mystical lens. And this lens couldn't care less about the past. It's looking for timeless, universal truths that can be experienced by anyone, right here, right now.
Now, the critique from the mystical side is pretty sharp. You've probably heard the saying, history is written by the victor. They argue that any historical record is going to be biased. It's selective. And because of that, it's just an unreliable foundation for something as huge as eternal truth.
So instead, they propose this core belief: science changes, history ends, but consciousness is eternal. From this point of view, the only constant, the only truly reliable source of truth we'll ever have is our own inner awareness.
Which, of course, leads us to the big, obvious question. So, which interpretation is better?
And the answer is, well, better completely depends on what your goal is. Are you trying to understand the past, to figure out what happened? Or are you trying to use these ancient stories to transform your present, right now? See, neither lens is really superior to the other. They're just asking totally different questions.
And that's really what this whole explainer boils down to. It leaves us with one final, pretty profound question that I want you to think about. Is truth something we find by digging through the dusty records of history, or is it something we awaken deep within ourselves?